This is the Deadline Contenders panel for Amazon's Hunters. We're here today with creator and co-showrunner David Weil, co-showrunner Nikki Toscano, and actress Jerrika Hinton, who plays FBI agent Millie Morris. Hunters follows a young Jewish man played by Logan Lerman. It's New York, 1977, and his grandmother has just been slain by hidden Nazis in America. He teams up with an eclectic group of Nazi hunters led by Al Pacino. Here's a clip.
This is Gretel Fisher's INS file. And this paperclip mark in the corner means that there was another file attached, one that laid out all of her dirty swastika embroidered laundry, and you knew that, didn't you? So we both know there are Nazis here in America. And I found them by following this trail of corpses that led to you, but I promise you, you don't have enough life left in your old man body to go out and murder all the ones still out there drinking Budweiser and eating sloppy joes. This thing is bigger than a few old-timers hiding out in the burbs, and this paperclip mark proves that the government was the one who moved the Nazis in next door. I'm building a case, and I want your help.
So, David, I'll start with you. Take us back to the inspiration for this. Tell us how it all goes back to Grandma.
Yeah, it does. It all goes back to Grandma. My grandmother's name was Sarah Weil. She was a survivor of Auschwitz-Birkenau and Bergen-Belsen and Unterlüss, which was a work camp. And she was one of the most important people in my life. She was so instrumental to me and my three older brothers growing up. And from a very young age, she would tell me and my brothers the stories of her experiences during the war. They were stories of great good versus terrifying evil. But they were stories of hope and courage and survival. And, growing up, I could see those stories through the prism of comic books and superheroes. Those were the things that I was reading at the time. And so that's how I really understood who she was, this superhero in my mind. And as I got older, I struggled with this notion of birthright and legacy. How would I, continue her story? How would I keep her light alive? And Hunters became that answer. It became this quest to, fulfill this birthright. It became a love letter to my grandmother. And it also became this, ability to shed light on some hidden crimes and hidden truths and get a justice, even if on screen, a catharsis and a wish fulfillment for people who've always felt persecuted, who linger with trauma and injustice, and allowed them to get a little bit of revenge and a little bit of justice in some way.
David and Nikki, you got Al Pacino for this TV series. How did you do it? Tell me about that. Tell me about working with him and pitching him and getting him aboard.
I'll start off. I mean, we had he read the script, and we had a series of meetings with him where we spoke about the character of Meyer Offerman and what David had in mind when he invented the character. And I think that the coolest part of working with Pacino was that when we started discussing the character, there was this constant brainstorming going on at all times, a brainstorming that started in those first meetings and continued all the way through post-production. He's just incredibly committed to the craft in a way that I had never experienced before. And I think that he prompted David and I and the rest of the cast at all times to be, bringing their A game at all times.
And Jerrika, tell me about working with him and also prepping for your role as an FBI agent in the 1970s. We've known that, Nazis were always hiding in South America, but were they in fact hiding in America? I know that's a lot of questions there.
It's a lot of questions. Let's see. Going in order, working with Al, like Nikki said, he really does. His intensity, his eagerness, his willingness to collaborate. I love people who are willing to collaborate. He brings a brings a fuck ton of energy and ideas. And so that's really invigorating to be around. And it really does make you want to step up and bring, like, you know, if you thought you were bringing your A game, find your A+ game, you know, find whatever versions you can that can help to just, you know, serve the work. You know, he's all about serving the work. And I feel like that's what it should be about. And you don't always find people, whether they've been in the industry for a week or if they've been in the industry for 50 years, you know, people aren't always like that. And so that was very refreshing. It was refreshing. It was refreshing and energizing and exhausting in all the best ways to work with him. And as far as preparing to play Millie, you know, I think it was a multi-pronged approach for me. It was about kind of developing her inner life, figuring out what she was like as a child, especially as a queer child, growing up in the Catholic Church, growing up with two very old-fashioned parents, figuring out what that did to her, what her memories focused on, and also figuring out a lot about the world of the FBI. There was a particular former agent that I spoke to named Jerry Williams, who was monumentally helpful in helping me piece together a lot of that part of Millie. Jerry herself is a Black woman who began in the Bureau around the same time that Millie did. And so talking to her was a gift. She was able to share some personal stories about the things that she endured during her early time in the Bureau that was really helpful to me. And I can't remember what your last question was because you asked me so many.
Basically about Nazis in America in the 70s.
Yeah, they were here. That's real.
That's real. You know, I'm watching this. And the opening sequence in its vibrant colors right there next to the ocean reminded me of the Burt Lancaster film, The Swimmer. And then there's the scene down at Cape Canaveral in that bathroom. And it's all black and red, and it's so Kubrickian. And I just love the look. Could you talk about the visuals and also about the icons that were going on, the crosses and the arcs that we see throughout the series?
For Nikki and I, sort of the way we came at this and how we wanted to represent the 1970s on screen, I think oftentimes in certain series, it feels like a history lesson. And I think instead for us, we really wanted to conjure a feeling instead. And so we love the idea of heightened colors and poppy colors. We love the idea of sort of the language that those colors carry over the course of an episode or a season. They begin in a poppier way, like the barbecue scene at the beginning. But by the end of that episode, the colors are a little bit desaturated. They're a little bit more real and a little bit more grounded. And so everything, you know, we employ, we really wanted to evoke this sort of language of, you know, what seems like a comic book actually becomes very real and very scintillatingly real. And we worked with, you know, amazing craftsmen. We had the most amazing production designer, Kurt Beach, our pilot director, Alfonso Gomez-Rayon, who was looking at thousands of images from the 1970s and using the idea of comic book panels to frame certain shots. If you're looking closely enough, where, you know, there are shots through windows that evoke that feeling of a graphic novel. What else, Nick? What else?
I mean, I think that we worked a lot with our cinematographer for the pilot, Fred Elms, in creating this sort of color palette. We obviously jumped from the stylized world of the 1970s to the Holocaust and making sure that we were coming up with different levels of saturation for whatever time period we were actually in, so that you could live in the more poppy world of the 70s and yet also pay a great deal of reverence to the Holocaust when we were spending time inside those scenes. And, you know, as far as the daggers, and I'll throw that back to David.
Yeah, the daggers kind of became our secret weapons. I think we were looking for ways, you know, Hunters is about a group of people who are so rarely portrayed as superheroes. And it was exciting to us to give them iconography, whether it's weaponry or whether it's colors like the color yellow, which, during the Holocaust, that was the color of the Jewish star. It was something mandated by the Nazis for Jews to wear. For us, let's reclaim that color. Let's make that color ours. Let it be a show of strength. And so, you know, for example, Jonah, often wears the color yellow. It's his superhero color, so to speak. And so there are a lot of these little Easter eggs that we kind of saturated throughout the piece to evoke this feeling of reclamation of power, of superheroism, and of, kind of good triumphing over evil.
David, Nikki, Jerrika, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been the Deadline Contenders session for the Amazon series Hunters.